All right, welcome in episode 23 of New Wave Certified. What we're going to talk about today is the turkey drive, how that went, and the impact we were able to make on families here in Cedar Rapids. And I also need to kind of shed some light on some of the results that we saw from our early weeks of the Plyometric program, right? And kind of talk about what a session looks like if you're interested in finding out more about that, as well as kind of diving into a little bit about like the science and how it all works and how it all pays off to becoming a better athlete. So I encourage you guys to stick around for that. I'm your host, John Larkin. I've been training athletes here in the community for about 5 years now, have had multiple Division I athletes and college athletes come through, as well as a few record holders at a few high school and now some state champs. So shout out to everybody that's came through the doors of New Wave and trained with us in parks and all that good stuff, right? We've come a long way in 5 years. So that said, it's been a little over a year. We opened our facility, our training facility here, November 17th of 2024. We're filming this on November 25th, 2025. So it's been about a year and 1 week. So super exciting, but without further ado, we'll get into the episode. All right, so like I had mentioned earlier in the show, right, in the introduction, our athletes that have came in first 2 weeks, they saw some pretty noticeable results. I mean, you know, we test them every single day. Some athletes are training 2 days a week, 1 day, 3 days, right? Those are wide variants, but when it came down to putting in all the data, right, I put down all the data from every single athlete that goes through this program. What we saw was about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch increase in their vertical jump in 2 weeks, right? Now, I will say, and I tell all my athletes this, part of that is contributed to you learning how to jump. Just the technique, right? Not necessarily all power and force production that you've now gained, right? Some of it is, or the mass majority of it is contributed to technique. Now, that does translate to the game, however, so it is a valuable skill to learn, right? Now, I'll kind of give you a few examples of what I'm talking about here, right? I had a kid I was visiting with last night, and you know, he just signed up about a week ago, and I was asking him like, hey, what do you think about your first, you know, week and a half? And he said, man, I love it. It's going great. You know, I've never done anything like this before. And I mean, last week we tested my vert and I got, you know, this number, and now I've gone up like 2 inches already, 2-3 inches already. And that's where I was like, good, I'm glad that you're going up. You know what I mean? And I had to explain a little bit. I'm like, well, you know, a lot of that is contributed to your technique, but that's a good thing, right? Because now when you get in the game, you're going to know how to jump. You're not just going to get this high off the ground. You're going to get that high off the ground, right? And that might be the difference between you getting your hand on a ball or, you know, knocking a pass down or whatever it is, right? Grabbing a rebound. Another story I want to talk about is last night, right? I had this youth group in, right? So I train youth athletes, middle school athletes, high school and college, right? So I get these little youth kids coming in, right? They all play together on the same team. They all know each other type thing. So they like to talk, they like to have fun and all that good stuff, which I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the guys having fun and people talking and stuff like that, but the work needs to be done. And so I had to kind of stop them before the test. And I said, guys, look, we need to lock in here, right? Because up until this point, a lot of you kids in this group, in this specific group, have not PR'd, right? They haven't gone up. They've kind of stayed about the same, right? They're not really in that average of results that I talked about. And they, you know, stopped, they listened, and they kind of tell from the tonality in my voice that, hey, I'm being serious, right? And I need you to lock in here. And so first kid comes up, first jump, PRs by like an inch and a half. I'm like, all right, cool. Like this is good. Like that's the example that we want to set. That's the standard, right? Next kid comes up, same thing. About 1/2 inch difference though. Not about an inch and a half, about a 1/2 inch. So good, we're on track, right? So they kind of got the idea of the importance of focusing and what that can do, right? It was almost like a little lesson within the session, right? And I kind of explained to them at the end, I said, look, every rep needs to be 110%. Every rep needs to be your best rep, as best as you can, right? That's the only way you're gonna get results in a program like this, because it's all output driven, meaning that you're only gonna get out what you put in, right? So kind of just teaching those lessons and what it's like to train. And I think that is gonna translate later on to their team when they go back and, you know, they say, hey, we gotta lock in, or hey, I gotta give it, you know, if I really wanna become better, like this is what it's gonna take. I need to put in 100% effort every single rep, instead of just going through the motions. So how did we get those results? How did we get these athletes to go up by so much in such little time, right? I want to talk a little bit about Plyometrics 101 and why they're important for developing the athlete, right? In my opinion, plyometrics are one of the most potent stimulus that an athlete can get in order to develop and become more explosive and a more coordinated athlete. And here's why. So in sport, a lot of times the best athletes can contract and relax at a higher rate. They can produce force a lot more quickly. And then they are also able to utilize energy source from the ground and use it to their advantage at a more efficient level than other athletes, right? And so how does plyometrics go into that? How do plyometrics train those three things I just talked about? Well, here's how. So when you lift weights, we'll start with the force production piece. When you lift weights, right? Let's just say you're back squatting, 300 pounds, right? You're producing a lot of force to lift that 300 pounds, right? And move that mass, but you're also producing a lot of force into the ground, right? With your muscles, right? Into your tissues. Are you gonna do that very fast? Probably not if you're lifting that heavy of a load, but you're still producing a high peak force in that sense. Now, when it comes to doing a box jump or a depth jump or anything like that, where you're jumping off the ground, you're pushing not only your body weight into the air, but you're also having to overcome the gravity in that sense. And so sometimes you're almost producing more force than what you would on a back squat. Now, I don't know about 300-pound back squat compared to just a regular body weight jump, but you could also load your jump, right? So sometimes what I have athletes do is they grab dumbbells, right? And they do squat jumps with the dumbbell. So they're producing a larger amount of forces, but they're also, here's the difference, they're doing it in a short amount of time compared to that long, slow back squat that we just talked about in our example. And the reason why that's important is because sport is not always this long, slow rep. A lot of things happen fast. They happen very fast, right? And so like I talked about, the athlete that can contract and relax the fastest typically wins the rep, the snap, the jump ball, whatever it is that you're doing in sports. That whole concept that I just explained to you is what we call rate of force development. And the essence behind rate of force development is fairly simple. How much force can you produce in the littlest amount of time as possible? So again, a back squat, it's going to be a low rate of force development. You're going to produce high amounts of force, but it's going to be a low amount of, over a long duration. With a squat jump or a box jump or anything of that nature, you're still going to produce a high amount of force, but it's going to be in a very short amount of time, right? And that's more transferable to sport. So another thing with plyometric training is that it also teaches athletes how to co-contract their joints and then pre-activate muscles and tissues in their body before their feet hit the ground, right? So when you are sprinting or jumping or cutting, your foot is in the air for a split second, and then right before it touches the ground, your muscles need to activate. Your tissues need to contract or lengthen in order to allow your joints to move the way they need to, so that way they can impact the ground the way that you are intending them to. Now, when we do plyometrics, right? So let's just pretend that we're doing like a box jump or a depth jump where you're stepping off the box and your feet are in the air before you hit the ground. That is your nervous system sending signals to your tissues that they need to contract, they need to relax, right? That fine balance, right? So you're building that skill within the neuromuscular network to go ahead and turn on and turn off different tissues to execute the movement that you're intending to execute. Now, the more and more you do that, you're going to build a skill, and you're going to be able to contract and relax at a higher efficiency, right? And that's going to easily translate to, when you go and you play sports. So I say all this to say that I do think that our plyometric program is one of the things that are going to set the athletes apart when they go back and they go play their sports after the session's done. I think they're going to see a lot more explosiveness, right, due to rate of force development. I think they're going to see a lot more coordination due to, the pre-activation and co-contraction things that we just talked about there. And I think that they're just going to be a more durable athlete, right? And so touching on that durability piece, I want to kind of shift gears and talk about what a session looks like. So in case you were wondering, what a session looks like is fairly simple, right? We get our athletes in, we start them out with some jump rope, right? Things that are going to be more extensive, right? A lot of volume, right? A lot of ground contacts, and that is just going to increase their core body temperature, get them warmed up. Once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and do some loaded mobility, right? Some movement patterns that are going to allow them to move better, to feel better, loosen up. Once we're done with the warm up, right, we'll go ahead and we'll get into some loaded mobility, right? Things that are going to stretch them out, get them moving better, reduce any type of viscosity, right, which is basically your fluid dynamics within your body, right? So if you have something that's very viscous, it's not going to glide very well. You're going to be very stiff. So we want to reduce that, right? And then we also kind of address more of like the fascial lines, right? We got the front line, back line, lateral line, spiral. There's a whole bunch of different ones I can get into on another podcast. But anyway, we address all that stuff, right? So we work on their hips, their knees, ankles, spine, all that good stuff. Then we get into what I call move strong or 3D strength. So we did the loaded mobility, which is fine, good. Now I need to activate them a little bit more and prepare them for plyometric training. So we'll do things that are more like we talked about earlier, squatting, right? So example of a progressed movement we did yesterday, we did a heel elevated skater squat with a goblet setup. So the athlete would stand with their heel elevated on like a plate, which allows them to get more range of motion when they're squatting, right? They would stand on one leg, they'd squat down on a single leg, and then stand up, right, with some load, right? So that is a slow movement, but it's also going to produce a lot of force and teach them how to balance throughout that session, or excuse me, that exercise. And so that kind of translates to 3D strength, three-dimensional strength. We'll do a lot of balance training, right? For example, I have them hold a med ball. You got to fall down into a hinge. So now this is a hinge pattern rather than a squat pattern. Rotate your spine, press the ball, rotate the spine, press the ball, overhead, right? So we're getting all these different perturbations, right, to teach them how to co-contract and be able to balance their system under load. 3D strength, move strong. So by the time that's all said and done, we're probably about 20 minutes into the session, maybe 25. That stuff, that 3D strength usually takes the most amount of time because it is slower, right? It's not fast plyometric movements yet. But by the time they're all said and done with that, they're warmed up. They got a good sweat going. They feel like they're working, all that good stuff. Then we transition into more of the plyo part of the workout, right? That's when we're doing fast, rate of force development, either concentrically or eccentrically. We're doing any type of pattern that's going to prepare them for the jump, or we're doing something that's more like joint related. So for example, an exercise I had them do yesterday, they put their foot up on a box, they'd almost get down into a lunge, right, with their foot elevated on the box, and they had to take that rear foot and hop it side to side laterally, right? And so now you're working your ankle joint, right? You're working that ankle, you're working a spring over an extensive amount of time, and you're just getting reps and teaching your brain how to co-contract in different angles for that ankle stability. Once we're all done with those type of things, we'll go ahead, we'll test them. They're warmed up, they're ready to go, their nervous system is firing. We'll test them, track them, all that good stuff. And after that's all said and done, we'll finish up with a little bit of gaming. We'll do a little bit of competition, right? We'll play like ultimate football, basketball. We'll play maybe 7-on-7 or something like that. Just something to keep them engaged, you know what I mean? And like I said earlier in the show, I'm all for having a good time, you know, making sure that you're having fun doing what you're doing, but the work comes first, right? So that's kind of my philosophy in that sense. Hey, now that we got all the science and the business out of the way, let's talk a little bit about, you know, what it was like to do this first annual turkey drive here at New Wave Performance and the Wave of Opportunity Foundation. And I tell you what, I've never done anything like this before. I've always wanted to do something like this. I've participated in similar events in the past for other organizations, but it was a little different doing something on my own. And so it was kind of a unique experience. I really didn't know what to expect. This is our first year doing it. You know, we got a decent turnout, you know what I mean? We're able to feed a handful of families, you know, because of the generosity of people that are in our community, our New Wave community. And so I just want to take a moment and thank those families of those athletes that came by and made those donations. You're setting a great example for your kids and your family, and I thank you for that. You know, the whole purpose of this was to just give back and to set examples and to let people know that we truly care about the people that we work with, one, but then two, the people that, you know, we see every day in our community. And I keep saying the word community, and that's because it truly feels like that. It truly feels like, you know, now that I've been here and we've been serving people and we've met so many people over these last handful of years, it truly feels like, you know, we contribute a large part of what makes, you know, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, North Liberty, you know, Center Point, Urbana, Marion, Mount Vernon, whatever it is, right? But namely Cedar Rapids, because that's where our business is. It truly feels like we do make an impact. And so not only making an impact through sports, but also making an impact, you know, in the holiday season truly means more. And like I said, I just think it sets a great example for future generations to come. I got to shout out one of my athletes that came by and volunteered and kept me company during the time, Mario. He's a great kid, you know what I mean? He's always been the type to volunteer and work with, you know, missions like this. Like, for example, his dad, he owns Frank's Tree Service here in Cedar Rapids. He had a coat giveaway that he did a few weeks ago, and he's been doing it for a few years now. I went last year, checked it out. They had over 2,000 people show up. So think about that impact, right? How many, you know, families got coats to stay warm in the winter, right? Things like that, right? That's a high character thing. And we want high character people in our building, right? And so I use Mari as that example, because he was one of those people to come by and volunteer his time to help me with this. And then also we partnered with Vernell Chapman, right? Tony Chapman, right? He runs Saving Us, which is also nonprofit here in Cedar Rapids that's dedicated towards, you know, serving people, you know, in ways that we just talked about. So overall, I'd say it was a success. It's certainly something to be proud about. You got to start somewhere type thing, but just looking forward to what we can do next year, and maybe even what we can do around Christmas time. So stay tuned. If anybody's got any ideas, make sure you send them over to me. If you want to partner with the Wave of Opportunity on something else like this, make sure you just get in contact with us. Or better yet, comment below this video if you got any ideas, and make sure you're subscribed or following us on our social media so that way we can connect. On the topic of giving, Black Friday deals are going on right now. It's our turn to continue to give to you guys who are huge fans of New Wave Performance and what we've got going on here, right? So this Black Friday, right, all week, we're doing deals where if you are a new member, you can get half off, 50% off your first month here at New Wave, right? So think about think about that for a second, right? We've never offered any type of discount this large. So there's only going to be one opportunity to get it at this low of a price. I think this is a great opportunity to take advantage of that. If you're interested, come check it out. Come take advantage of it. We've only got 5 available though, and I think I'm going to sell about 2 more of them this morning. So there's probably going to be 3 by the time this video is posted. Another offer we've got going on: buy 1 month, get 1 month free for a family member or friend, right? So if you've got a sibling in your family that's also thinking about training with you, we get a lot of families in here that do like a family plan, right? Where they'll all come at the same time, or they'll follow up each session. This is a great chance for you to get another discounted opportunity, right? Get more experience. Or if you got a friend that you want to bring in, for a month, you know what I mean, as a guest, this is a great chance to do that as well. And then we've also got a 15% off a 3-month paid in full. So if you want to pay 3 months ahead of time, we can give you 15% off on that. So you can save up to like $200 on that if you do something like that, right? For our members, our existing members, we're doing a $50 off a membership upgrade, right? So if you're on like the base plan and you want to go up to the premium, or if you're on the intro and want to go up to the base, you can get $50 off your first month of doing so. And then last but not least, we got 15% off our merchandise. We're almost sold out. I want to say we've got 5 mediums left, 5 larges, and then 4 extra larges left. So running low on stock, grab them before they're gone. 15% off for a limited time. You know what? We're going to talk a little bit about Cyber Monday as well, because what we're going to do for Cyber Monday, right? We're going to do a drawing. So if you are subscribed, you follow us on Instagram, X, whatever, right? I want you to comment below our next post on Monday to be entered into a drawing for an extended offer of the Black Friday deals, because they do end on Friday at noon, right? So you can take advantage of this Black Friday deal on Monday, Cyber Monday, if you follow the instructions that I just laid out there. So you got to follow us on Instagram and X, subscribe to our YouTube, and then comment on our post on Monday, right? Simple as that. Right, get 50% off, or buy 1, get 1 month free. I want to round out today's podcast by talking about how we're going to put more athletes in front of coaches. And I want to talk about the reach that we're able to make for these athletes, right? So recently I've been having a lot more college coaches kind of following me on social media and stuff like that, and just connecting in that sense. And so one of the great ideas that my producer had, right? Shout out to my producer, Darshawn Smith Productions. He mentioned that we should do like a recruiting page on our website. With that, I'm gonna share with you what that would look like, right? What that will look like. So let's pretend that you're an athlete, right? And you're trying to get recruited. The things that you need to have your measurables. So like your height, your weight, your grade, right? So what class you are, right? Your GPA, things of that nature. Then you'll also need to have some KPIs. So like, what is your 40-yard dash? What's your broad jump? What's your vertical jump? Maybe some of your lifts, something like that, right? And then also some of your stats from the previous season, right? And then maybe a link to your highlights. We're gonna include all those things on our website, and we're also gonna include like a write-up, like a short paragraph talking about your strengths and all that good stuff, and what we see out of you here at New Wave. So I talked earlier about being like a high character individual, right? Including that, all right? This kid, they participate in these activities, they do X, Y, and Z. You know, they're this type of athlete, they're this type of player, they're a great fit for things like that, right? So you'll get a write-up and all that good stuff. And we see a handful of days throughout the week, over months at a time. So I think a coach would obviously like to see, what we might think of you and what we see out of you on, a weekly basis, right? And so this is just another way for us to promote the athletes that come here, to provide more value to you guys and just get you out there and give you more opportunities, to continue to create a career in sports. And so with that, we'll be able to share these links on our social media pages, like I already talked about, right? I've got coaches that are following me on Instagram, on Twitter now, right? So I can put you out in front of those coaches, right? And just get you more exposure. Pretty much, if you want to be one of the first athletes that gets put on that page, make sure you hit us up and like get honest about it, so that way we can get you put up there. We'll put your profile picture and all that stuff on there. Make sure we create you your own little profile on our website. But yeah, I definitely would expect something like this to be coming within the next probably 2 months, 2 or 3 months, I'd say. So before we get too far into 2026. All right, so again, thank you everybody who participated in the turkey drive. Again, take advantage of these Black Friday deals. They only last until Friday at noon, unless you participate in the Cyber Monday challenge or competition, whatever you want to call it, that we talked about. And then if you love finding out more about plyometrics and how they benefit you as an athlete, make sure you comment below what you liked about it and what you want to see next. That way we can continue to feed you more information on how to become a better athlete. So without further ado, thank you for tuning in to episode 23 of the New Wave Certified Podcast. I'm your host, John Larkin. Until then, we'll see you next time.